Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Magic the Gathering Arena. Today is Wednesday, June 10th. We're starting a little late for me because I basically just overslept. Uh, so I want to do something here with the audio. First of all, music plays. It just doesn't play in this main menu when you first launch anymore. So that was just an artistic decision by Magic Wizards of the Coast to not play music, which is the right decision, although I kind of wish it would just play something very, very subtly, like at 10% of its maximum capability, because it is hard to tell if I'm even picking up the audio from the game when it's so low. Now, I have been playing a lot of extra off screen to get 15 wins, which has helped me gain some more gold and experience. But it also is mostly just I've been doing that because I want to avoid scheduling videos, which always hates. Here's the deal you always want to take. You spend 50 gold to get 500 gold. As far as these other daily deals, yeah, you really would have to be a whale to get all of these, particularly when some of these skins can only be bought in witch items, the premium currency. Still trying to figure out how much we're gonna actually have when the new expansion comes out. It's probably not as much as I'd like it to be. Here we have a Throne of Eldraine pack, which these cards would still be useful, but I think I kind of already have all these cards. Clearly what happened there is I opened way too many Throne of Eldraine packs since that was the first expansion that I started playing Magic Arena with. And now I just have a ton of extra cards I'm getting as they toss me the occasional Throne of Eldraine pack. So it really is probably around 25 packs at maximum, probably closer to 20 that you should open at the beginning of any expansion. We have a workshop here, which will play an event deck, and we'll get it's a 5-color deck. That's quite a lot. Look at this nightmare. How many cards is this? 140 cards. And I don't see a ton of cycling. Let's see if we can get a breakdown here. 75 creature cards of all kinds of things. 19 instants, 18 sorceries, artifacts, equipment, enchantments, planeswalkers. I have no chance whatsoever of figuring out what the strategy here is. Mastermind. You only get stronger if you keep bearing heavier loads, so I'll be honest with you, this one's going to require you to stay focused and think critically. I'm sending you out with no lands, but instead I want you to discard a card in exchange for a land that will make any color of mana. Get creative and get wins. Wow. So these workshop puzzle, they're not like the puzzles in Hearthstone for sure, where they started off very simple and obvious and they were controlling what cards you would draw and what cards would be played by the opponent. And I would prefer to see something like that added instead of them just creating what is really just a ridiculous rule. So I have like no clue. Let's see. So it'd make your opponent discard 2 cards. But let's see. What are these other things? Let's see. exile cards from the top of your library until you exile an online card, then put that card into your hand. If this card's converted mana cost is 4 or greater, repeat the process. So that would give me cards. Let's see. Okay. So I gotta play something. And let's just try this. Okay. I hate this. I hate this so much. Like, not only are they not gonna give you time to figure out what to do, like, you're gonna have to figure this out. I'm gonna have to just discard like a whole bunch of cards. Discard this, and you can only do that one turn. So, okay. You discard a card and then it gives you mana. Okay, we're figuring this out a little bit better. Let's see. Let's go ahead and discard this. And then put that on the field, finally. Finally have a creature on the field. Protection from white, black, or blue, red's not going to help much. I probably should discard this. Should have discarded that one. This is a nightmare. This is a complete and total nightmare game. And no doubt somebody's going to figure out how to play better than I am. Particularly if it's an AI that knows what they're doing. You can see he has 5 mana. I only have 3. X damage. Well, that might work at some point in the future. Discard that. And then play that. If this gets on the field, I could create some treasure tokens that would then help somewhat. Yeah. So, yeah. I haven't played like anything other than Magic since the last recording. So the accountability section falls fairly flat today. I didn't schedule the videos, but I did upload videos. I did work on my network, and apparently my network just had some settings that weren't being advertised in the DHCP options, if that makes any sense to anybody listening. So I wasn't advertising that the router can do certain things, and because I wasn't advertising that the router could do certain things, it seems like that was causing a negative impact on performance to a major amount, because all of a sudden it seems like my internet is twice as fast on the download speeds. That being said, that could really just all be flimflammery, and my internet service provider could very well could be just fluctuating, which would be totally believable also, that it would just randomly fluctuate and increase in speed and then decrease in speed. But yeah, at a certain point it is getting to the point where it's no longer a fun little experimental home lab as far as my network is concerned, and I might be more willing at this point to just revert to using a standard router that does considerably less, but does considerably less with more predictability. But that would be a hard sell, because then I would lose ad blocking, which is a great feature. I'd lose a lot of security, top of the line experimental security things like DNS crypt over TLS or DNS over HTTPS. I think I may have set up both of those systems, and they might be racing against each other, so that sometimes I get DNS encrypted over HTTPS, or sometimes I get it over TLS. The argument is still raging on which one of those is better. And so, yeah, there's still some questions there. It would be nice if you could set it and forget it on all devices and you never have to think about it, but even my set it and forget it devices don't really work that way. I've had to go to quite an extreme measure on one of my devices by replacing both the network cord and the power plug extension, just to see if perhaps something is going wrong with the power going in or the network going out that is causing it to have problems in the past. And then one device which I had physically unplugged from the network because it was giving me trouble, magically started using Wi-Fi, even though I never could get it to use Wi-Fi before that point. So, yeah. At a certain point, you start to feel like you're just an old man who doesn't know what you're doing at all, or an old person who doesn't know what they're doing. Imposter syndrome often starts to creep up on you when you're having frustrations. Particularly when I think about, like, when I was in school and when people were in awe of my, like, programming ability and my skill and my knowledge in IT stuff. Like, I don't know if maybe a lot of that knowledge is probably pointless and old and out of date. Almost certainly a lot of it is. But I don't know if the teachers weren't kind of just lying and the students weren't just kind of not that... Well, obviously the students wouldn't know whether or not what I was doing was as amazing as they thought it was. So, but I don't know. You do get that imposter syndrome sometimes where it's like, was everybody just trying to build up my ego? Was everybody just saying good job, attaboy? That might have been exactly the case. Let's see. So there is something to always question yourself. Also, certainly, it's not like, even if you were the best in your school, that doesn't mean a lot unless your school is just unquestionably and provably the best in its class and in the world, in the country. Because you could certainly be the best in a school and the school could just be terrible. And you may put the teachers that are teaching you in awe, but the teachers that are teaching you may be idiots too. Particularly in IT, I think that's kind of the case in particular. Yeah, I have no desire to to continue playing this workshop, I'm going to take that free victory and move on, because this pretty much is just a combination of cards. And while some of these cards seem like they might have something that somewhat synergizes with this idea, in general, the idea is just a dumb idea. So I'm going to take my money and run as far as that goes. And we need to do a draft, but I don't want to do Ikra draft. I want to see if we can wait till the next expansion. And let's see. Because we have 19 days until this season ends. So, but we have only 14 days. So we'll have 5 days to do a core 2020 draft and get cards that way, instead of doing an Ikra rare draft. And we will probably just be late in general as far as purchasing the core 2021 mastery set. Guess we could do Wednesday brawls too, but yeah, I don't think I want to do that. And this, a quick draft for Ikra, is no better than the premium draft for Ikra. Yeah, I have no interest in doing Wednesday brawls, and it is still very ridiculous that they only let you play brawls on Wednesday. It definitely is a part that why there's still so many people playing Magic Online is that they fail in Arena to really fix the issue of letting people play the games they want to play when they want to play it. Also, undoubtedly they're looking to screw people who have played on the Magic Online, and I would highly recommend anybody who has any cards on Magic Online, because there's some kind of way to trade those and get some monetary value out of it. I would highly recommend trying to sell all of those as quickly as possible, because Wizards of the Coast, I almost guarantee it, is going to screw out the Magic Online community and just shut down that without any notice whatsoever. And if you've got hundreds or thousands of dollars worth of cards, the way that economy works, I don't know, but I know there's an economy there. If you've got that money in Magic Online, try to get that out as quickly as possible. Sell your accounts, I guess, if there's no other way to do it. Because clearly they're going to move everybody to Magic Arena, and almost certainly, I would guess, they're going to move the people over to Magic Arena without actually supporting all the cards that are in Magic Online. And yeah, it will. I wouldn't be surprised if you start to see some major just banning of players for the smallest of infractions, or made up infractions too. So they might try to get rid of a couple thousand people just by saying they tweeted something offensive or cancel type culture. That way they can close down the accounts without taking as much blame. But at a certain point they will just say, yeah, forget it, we're going to shut the whole thing down. And I don't know how the pandemic will really affect that, but that was clearly what they plan on doing, obviously. And I don't trust Wizards of the Coast one bit to do it the right way and treat the customers right. That is not in the DNA of that company or its parent company, Hasbro. Let's just be honest. There is, I guess, a slight benefit in starting a little bit late today, in the fact that there was some small presentation of a few games, most notably a new Alex Kidd game, which we'll talk about later, but not really a ton. However, I will say that even with this small presentation, all of a sudden my Twitter feed was almost completely full, as far back as I could scroll, with new things from yesterday. Which means I am approaching the point where it's going to start making sense for me to make sure I check my Twitter feed and my news feeds as far as on a daily basis, or if not more often than that. I probably check it more than once a day, honestly. One of the things I saw is that Netflix wants to make a live action version of an anime called The Promised Neverland, which is an insanely stupid idea. In two things, without really spoiling it, The Promised Neverland is a show where the core conceit is that it is full of kids. Young children. Like 10, 11, 12-year-olds. So you're going to have, and the main characters are like that young. So you're going to have way too many child actors, which is going to make it way too difficult to film, or you're drastically changing the core conceit. The other thing, without spoiling too much, is that it is a very horrific story circling around these kids. So then you're going to make something that is offensive and objectionable, something that was like provocative because it was reaching the niche audience of anime fans who don't have the same hang-ups about violence or aggression or horror compared to a mainstream audience of a live action audience. So it's just like doomed for failure. It seems like Netflix just doesn't have a clue what they should be doing, and they're throwing a lot of spaghetti against the wall, and they're just gonna continuously peeve off people. There was another controversy just a week or two ago where they were going to change the outfit of Faye Valentine in a live action version of Cowboy Bebop, because her outfit, where she's wearing like a kind of G-string bikini bottom with short hot pants over it, and like a high cut kind of like vest that shows a lot of cleavage, like that they said no realistic person would wear that. Problem is, plenty of cosplayers have worn that exact outfit. Plenty of cosplayers, I'm sure, have been allowed in and around anime conventions with that outfit. That it's not that extreme. It's a high fashion and slightly lewd, by no doubt, but it's not so extreme that it really needs to be censored, particularly when you know that the visual styling of Cowboy Bebop is the main thing that would sell Cowboy Bebop live action to people. So, yeah. I keep getting the slight feeling that Netflix is willingly letting itself get taken for a ride, where Japanese people want to do something different and they want to get money no matter what, so they'll just agree to work for Netflix and then make a half-assed version of it. And it could be also Netflix is just on a unstoppable train at this point, where they can't admit that the Death Note live action movie was terrible. They can't admit that the things they've done before have been pretty terrible. So they're forever stuck in just moving forward because of that momentum. And Netflix's whole business plan is to basically have half of their content be terrible, and they don't really care. Which doesn't work when you're making a remake of a beloved classic compared to making something like 13 Reasons Why, which is just based off of a like young adult novel, I think, and while that might be a beloved novel amongst a small teenage subsect, not too many people are going to be upset about that. But yeah, I would say The Promised Neverland is in particularly the worst decision they've made so far. That's just completely undoable. Because if I was going to do it, if I was just forced to do that, I would have to age up all the kids. I would have to have 20-year-olds and instead of kids, which doesn't make sense because they're all like in an orphanage. So 20-year-olds in an orphanage doesn't make sense. You could do this if you were going to do like a CG animated version of the show, but there's really no reason to go from what is a anime style that looks flat in 2D but still uses CG to a 3D CG animated show, because you're not really changing it much at that point. You could maybe age up all the kids and have them all live in a college on campus, some kind of special campus college that doesn't let the students leave. And then you could probably take the general concept and reapply it, but I don't know how much you're really copying then, and how much of the story really works then. But it would fix the kids issue at the very least, and you definitely would be losing some of the horror element. But you could take that general concept and make like a 2-hour horror movie from it instead of a faithful recreation, or even an attempt at a faithful recreation of the show. Yeah, never work with kids, never work with animals. Two of the main rules of filmmaking. I'm gonna win here if I can do this. If I can just wait long enough and he can't pull anything crazy. We've got a game on Steam here called Hopbound, which looks like it's a platformer with some kind of crazy art aesthetics. It's a little too single tone. Well, it has a small color palette here, we can see. This definitely looks way different from the rest of it. It's just way too many shades of green, unfortunately. It's $1.79, English full audio. If this was just a little bit more colorful, or if it had just decided to be high contrast black and white, I might be okay with it. It's tapping cards. Yeah. We don't really have a ton of games to talk about, but we have a few. It does seem like we are just kind of slowly getting there. I'm not sure when the summer sale is going to happen, but I think was pushed back, and I think we'll probably see it in a week or two, and I really want to have to think about how many games I'm going to actually buy, because now that I think done recording Halloween footage, I need to think about, am I going back to my old system of having 2 or 3 games air a month, or am I going back with the newer system where I'm just so exhausted and so bad at making footage that I'm just going to air one thing, or maybe two things. Let's see. This, 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 and then this, and then block, and then activate this. And put this back on the field. Come on, game, let me do it. And then sacrifice this. I think at this point we are in a weird position now where, while we have seen a considerably smaller number of adult games, particularly low effort adult games, approved and allowed on Steam, we're no longer really seeing any consistent day. Like, it seemed fairly consistent that the every other Friday was the day that they would put out these games, and now it seems like they kind of are just coming whenever, which is fine by me, and it feels more fair. So here we have a game on Steam called Cyber Agent, which is tagged as having sexual content and nudity, and there is definitely a anime looking cleavage girl, but then you have a flat depiction, and then you have a CG depiction, and then you have other depictions that are different, where the actual game seems to be just a top-down twin-stick shooter, even though it's tagged as a visual novel. So it's a little bit all over the place. It's $1.33, has a whole bunch of languages, says it's a 3D tower defense game with 8 levels, 7 types of enemies. So yeah, that strikes me as this game doesn't know what it is, and it very possibly isn't anything at all. And it is just a combination of terrible screenshots designed specifically just to trick you to think there's a game there when there really isn't. See, next we have a game on Steam here called Rydo Wars, which normally I would think that would be a mistranslation to waifu, as in the Japanese word for wife. There is a Nutaku game called Waifu Wars. I wonder if this is that same game with all the adult content stripped out. It does feel like a lot of those Nutaku games could easily have the adult content stripped out, since there isn't really much there in the first place. This is early access for $2.69. It's English only, 17 achievements. Is there an argument here to actually put this on the follow list is the question. I don't think so. Like, as much as I think the game might be a little bit silly, at the end of the day, it is not going to be a high quality strategy placement game. And if I was going to try and play a strategy placement game, I should do something different. This guy's just cycling like crazy, trying to tap all my characters. See, Gamma Sutra has a job listing. Remedy Entertainment is looking for a senior dialogue designer. You don't see too many dialogue designer job listings. Espoo, Finland. We're starting to see slightly more job listings again. Let's see. Okay, so what do we want to do? We want to sacrifice this. And I hope that means that I can block this now. Did I move fast enough or did I not move fast enough? Even if I didn't move fast enough, I still probably would be fine. So he's gonna cycle again. All of that. I'm hoping I'm still doing things right. Yeah. Game 1. Sacrifice this. And win. He tried really hard. I have to applaud that. Applaud the effort. Though he was definitely not just going to roll over and lose. Interesting twist here. It's been a while, but Gamma Sutra has an article here that Red Candle Games Devotion is getting a relaunch in Taiwan. Remember, this was the game where the creators claimed that one of the contractor artists put something insulting, just a few insulting political phrases against the Chinese president. China is trying to attempt a hostile takeover of Taiwan. There's no other way to put it. Like, China's trying to attempt a hostile takeover of Hong Kong. Hong Kong doesn't want to be a part of mainland China. Taiwan doesn't want to be a part of mainland China. No country in a very long time has been willing to recognize that any country that is claimed by a large power isn't part of that large power, because if the United States started to recognize Taiwan or Hong Kong, then China might recognize if Texas decided to say it was not part of the United States. And it is this whole domino effect problem. And it certainly is something that could lead to war. But as for Devotion, it's just like a kind of cool looking Asian Taiwanese horror game that got review bombed by either Chinese citizens who were trying to raise their social credit score, or Chinese citizens who really believed that their president can't be insulted even the smallest. I doubt that's actually true. But who knows what the level of brainwashing actually has succeeded in that country. Or by computer bots. It was the thing that led to the review bombing response by Steam, which I don't think was particularly the best response, but I can also certainly understand why Valve had to do something when they literally saw evidence of government manipulation. And I'm not sure that we don't, on much smaller scales, see a lot of government bot manipulation on a lot of other games too. The main thing that has changed is COVID-19 certainly has happened since Devotion came out. Hong Kong protests have still continued and escalated. And I think the main thing that would have mostly irritated Taiwanese creators is that China put out a statement saying that they no longer... They removed the word peacefully in their statement of intent to quote, reunify or unify Taiwan with mainland China. Which you've seen that with Hong Kong too, that China is just saying, we will use violence, we will just violently take over this area. And there's only for the need of land, for the need of wealth, and for the need of power, that China seems to want to continue this imperialistic activity. You would think, from my understanding of history, that after mainland China found out that it was being secretly run by an imperialist communist Japan in the past, you would think that the Chinese people would not turn around and try and do the exact same thing. But there certainly is something to just being so incredibly overpopulated that leads to, like, brutal fascist dictatorships, brutal control. When there's fewer people, human life has more value. You don't need to constantly conquer people, constantly try to acquire more resources. But anyways, that is getting fairly political, and this really is a game that should have never been political. The publisher of the game in Taiwan had their license pulled very quickly and with no explanation. But Red Candle Games has to do something with this. They spent a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort on it. They have to sell this game. It's definitely not likely to sell too much on the controversy, frankly. Like, as much as SJWs and the mainstream video game media might try to promote Devotion, it's still going to just be an Asian horror game, and they've never really liked Asian games in general, and horror games particularly. So yeah, it'll get a few more sales, but this is not going to be a 50 million, 100 million copy game that sells. But they've got to do something, because it was either Red Candle Games goes bankrupt and then some other person buys the IP outside of Taiwan, which I don't know if you can easily transfer a Taiwanese copyrighted intellectual property to say a United States or Western company, and then they publish it. I don't think the Western companies want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. So, like, there's not probably a lot of people that would even be willing to buy it and sell it. So they have to just try and struggle and make money. In a alternate universe, Devotion would have come out. There would have been absolutely no controversy around it. It would have sold and been a fine, if not unremarkable, horror game, and they would have just made enough money to work on their next game, which is, I'm sure, what I would guess they want to do. Is they want to just make enough money to work on their next game, possibly even change the name of their company, just to get away from controversy. And as far as their response, Red Candle Games, as far as I recall, never doubled down on any of this. They completely threw that contractor artist under the bus, even if secretly they agreed with everything he said. They totally threw him under the bus. They totally blamed him. They removed the art as soon as possible. If anything, this is an example of the Chinese government being just oppressively cruel, when they could have just as easily said, thank you for removing this completely offensive propaganda. We recognize that it was not your fault, and we thank you for setting the record straight. China could have looked like the good guys, but they are in their lifeblood not capable of doing that, it seems. And a lot of governments are certainly like that. They can only be punitive. They cannot be... that they only know the stick. They don't know the carrot. Where better politics in my book would be to have turned that to an advantage. And said... and applauded them. And certainly they could have applied pressure secretly in the background, and I'm sure they tried to and did. But... they shouldn't Streisand affect it. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article, a Souls-like roguelike, 2 likes, The Legend of Hyperstar, launches June 2020. It's really bright, this image. It's an impressive indie project made by one man. Tell me if you've heard this claim before. Indie project made by one person. I think this is often the sales pitch that indie developers do, and I think it is never truly true. It almost stinks of the concept that a CEO of a business made and earned his salary without abusing and using the sweat equity and the effort of all of his lower employees. Particularly in indie game development, how much of your game really is made by one person when you're going to an Unreal store or a Unity asset store and you're buying animations, you're buying code, you're buying art, you're buying sound effects. You could easily claim it was made by one man because the vast majority of it is actually being made by someone who you license the content from. If I were to say make a cake would take flour, sugar, baking powder, eggs, maybe water, things like that. I could say, and nobody would really question it if I said I made this cake all by myself. But in all actuality, the cow made the milk, the chicken made the egg. Somebody took the oats and ground it down into flour. Somebody grew sugar in some sugar field. Some farmer grew half of that, frankly. Yeah, there's hundreds of people that go into even a simple process of like baking a cake. And I feel like the truth for indie games is very much the same thing. Whereas in the past, if you were a programmer who was programming in assembly language and you were programming all the sprites by hand and there were no helper libraries, and if you were making Pong, for instance, well, Pong's probably a bad example, but at some point in the past, it meant a lot more to say one person did it all. Now it really doesn't. And honestly, I think sometimes one person says they did it all and there's a whole secret team behind them. There's plenty of narcissists out there. Everybody should recognize that. I wouldn't be surprised if there is several games that have been sold as indie projects done by one person. In actuality, there was a whole collection of secret support staff that just don't get credited. Like, we still have a major issue, I would say, with games not crediting their creators. Let's go ahead and attack with everything, I guess. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. A Last of Us themed credit card is available in China. I think the last time anybody needs a credit card right now. That's pretty crazy. They don't let that happen in the United States, though. Like, I know I've seen in Japan in particular, the ability to put basically anything you want on a credit card. And there have been some companies that have tried to allow that, but then they've been fairly restrictive as far as like what copyrighted images you can upload to put on the credit card. Like in the way the copyright law works, technically, yeah, anything you would want on a credit card, unless it had been specially licensed, you wouldn't really be allowed to do. But the main problem is people in the United States can't even remember that $2 bills exist, let alone are they willing to believe that there isn't something fishy about your credit card if it looks artsy and has a picture on it that isn't rather generically bland. Like, you're alright if they give you like the options of like a beach background or something that's just kind of a background, but if you were to put Last of Us on it, for instance, people would think, oh, something's fishy is going on here, that somebody has scanned or hacked somebody's credit card and made a clone. Which, honestly, it's not a bad security option to tell people, like, no, all the credit cards should look all the same. That way, at a quick, simplistic glance, the people who are looking at those cards knows what's going on. Well, I just lost. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Gunbird 2, which looks like it is a kind of high action shoot 'em up game. Yeah, it kind of has a different art style to it. I probably wouldn't play a shoot 'em up, but it's $9.99 and it apparently has split screen co-op. Wait a minute, it says online ratings, so it has a leaderboard, Steam leaderboards. That's not really a great selling point. This does look like a 90s style animation, 90s style anime. Let's see. Yeah, that's pretty much how a lot of characters were drawn back then. I guess I can't justify putting this on the follow list though. Like, if I'm gonna play a bullet hell shooter or a shoot 'em up, I should probably play one of the best ones, not something that is newer and less likely. And I don't feel like I'm gonna go down that path. Kill 15 of your opponent's creatures. We need to kill 10 more creatures. And this deck is just not built around that concept. Next we have a COVID-19 isolation game, which seems like it's a low effort visual novel, for lack of a better term. I'm surprised there aren't more games with COVID-19 in the name. It's $8.39, a bunch of languages. Yeah, I kind of would have suspected we would have seen a lot more, but I wouldn't be surprised if Valve has been fairly careful about not allowing a large majority of these of games like that, because they are trying to sell on controversy, sell on drama, sell on unfortunate circumstances. And a little bit of curation there is not a bad thing. Apparently there's this thing called hash flags, which I can only assume is a Twitter thing, where if you hashtag certain things you get an emoticon, or some kind of art, and PlayStation 5 now has one of those. Which doesn't really mean anything to me, or probably too many people whatsoever, but it is intriguing that there is a technology that is out there and nobody really knows about. I don't know if hash flags really help anything as a concept, unless they were replacements for hashtags. I could then see it being useful. So if somebody typed in hashtag PlayStation 5 or PS5 even, that would be 3 letters, whereas an emoji would be like the width of 1.5 letter instead, so it would take up less space, and then you could fall back for any interface that can't load the image. It would just fall back to hashtag PlayStation 5. But then you also have to have those hash flag emojis be so incredibly recognizable that nobody is confused whatsoever as far as what the image looks like. And that's not how I use emojis when I use them. I use them more as kind of chapter markers or bullets in an indented list. And it works fairly well that way, I think. It makes my descriptions a little bit more colorful. Let's see. Moving on, Gematsu has an article. Blaze Blue cross-tag battle shipments and digital sales have topped 450,000 units. This is the 2nd anniversary, or we're soon to the 2nd anniversary. Yeah, Blaze Blue is definitely one of the contenders of the fighting games that I'm considering covering. If I were to actually spend the effort to cover fighting games. Gematsu has the Famitsu review scores for issue 1644. Again, really only reviewing 4 things. So they have Concept Desolation, which is 25 out of 40, so that's just awful. Golf with Friends, which is 29 out of 40, which means it's not that good. NeoCab for the Switch is 31 out of 40. And What's the Golf for the Switch, which is 33 out of 40. So nothing amazingly well reviewed. Yeah, you can definitely see that they are still mostly self-isolating and not doing anywhere as they're not really doing anywhere as much work as they would have normally. And it's, I mean, Famitsu can't review games if games aren't coming out, so it really is just a snowball effect of once the business slows down, all businesses around it slow down. That might not inherently be a bad thing, though. Like, if the whole world and all of capitalism just slowed down in general, that there might be less rush to make garbage, less rush to sell products that have no audience and people have no need of owning. Cars are a great example of that. If a new model car only came out every 10 years, there'd be a lot fewer people buying new cars every year for those prestige reasons. I didn't see any great clarification on this, but Bang & Olufsen? Yeah, I think it's Olufsen, and Xbox have partnered up to deliver high-end audio proposition for gaming. The companies joined forces to establish a high end of audio proposition, and it's just kind of a letter here. Yeah, improving audio in general is good. It's a little surprising it's Bang & Olufsen instead of DTS or Dolby Digital, which are the 2 major competing standard creators for surround sound. There is certainly a problem with the lack of people with surround sound systems that can't afford them, don't want them, aren't set up in such a way that it would make sense to have one. And that does inherently bring the lowest average common denominator as far as audio down to just stereo, and it's something akin to a high dynamic range of audio really can only go so far. Like, you going from 190 kilohertz to, say, 380 kilohertz, if that were a new standard, as far as just how many cycles per second you're sampling something at and playing back at, isn't going to be noticeable by most people. A lot of the audio options that have come out aren't really noticeable by most people because they don't have their setup correctly either. They have small TVs. A speaker on the left side of a TV versus a speaker on the right side of a TV tends not to sound that great. Even sound bars don't really sound that great. It wouldn't be a terrible idea for the Xbox Series X to have a line of products that's like, here's a sound bar, here's a surround sound system, here's some speakers that we have tested a little bit more and we know are a little bit more helpful. I wouldn't be surprised if honestly all they really are doing is going to try and... This guy sucks. I wouldn't be surprised if they really are just going to try and sell some headphones. And yeah, at the end of the day, a lot of game developers are not going to really bother with trying to... They're really not going to bother with trying to do something amazingly good with the audio if they don't care about the audio, which a lot of creators I don't think probably do. But certainly, as far as Microsoft and Xbox One Series X is concerned, they needed to do something with the audio. Like, it really did feel like they pretty much said that it was all going to be improvements in video without mentioning audio at all. And I feel like it was pretty much the same statement for the PlayStation 5. Where there should be something. Like, there should be this minimum recommendation to say, hey, we want you to have at least a sound bar that can simulate 4-speaker surround sound when playing our games. And in fact, we want it so bad that we're not going to guarantee that you have the best experience if you don't have at least a 4 surround sound style of syncing. We want sounds to sound like they're coming behind you. And like 4-speaker surround sound is the lowest, the minimum you could require, when you could very easily make the argument to just force everybody who's buying a $500 console that they also need a $1,000 surround sound system that is at least 5.1, if not 7.1. I don't know if you really need to go to 9.1, but then there also are some speakers that are now up firing, so they sound like they're coming from the roof and the sky. And those also are intriguing additions, more than just adding more speakers around you in a circle. But I would recommend most people, if you were building a new surround sound system, get a nice Yamaha surround sound receiver. My Yamaha has worked fairly nice, and get a 7.1 setup. Unfortunately, as someone who's speaking into a mic, I'm just using a headphones, and certainly streaming to YouTube, it's just surround sound, but it's just left and right stereo, not surround sound even. But yeah, I would say go big if you're going to have a surround sound system. Although then the question becomes, should you have a surround sound system at all? As people are cutting the cord and watching potentially less and less TV on a TV and more of it on a mobile device, the quality has actually gotten slightly worse, not better. I could kill all three of these guys, but I don't know if I want to. Moving on, Gamasutra has an article here. Online sales are up 517% at GameStop, though in overall sales are still on a decline. No surprise there, with stores being closed to walk-in customers and people being stuck in self-isolation. It is no surprise one bit that you would run into scenarios like that where people are buying more from GameStop. I also would say I suspect that people were not in the mood and frankly just too busy to start thinking about buying video games somewhere else. Also, you have Amazon.com not really prioritizing non-essential things, so it's no big surprise that people would buy things from GameStop when you have like Amazon.com, and I imagine Walmart too, probably more focused on shipping toilet paper than shipping video games. If Steam put out any numbers, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw major increases in download purchases, but there is a capping out of how much increased Steam sales can be for an audience that doesn't have a gaming PC, because if you can't get those PC parts from someplace like Newegg or Amazon, then you are still running into that same problem. Let's see, here we go. That one, and that one for sure, and that one. I could have attacked with all of those first. That was a dumb move on my part. Put that on the field. Put that on the field. Yeah, I could have probably played a lot of this better. Doesn't matter, we've won. So just gotta sacrifice everything. That was slightly unsafe. I should have left Bola Citadel and sacrificed this instead, but yeah. My Ecobee thermostat has decided to implement a new Eco Plus mode to save money and electricity by adjusting the temperature based on humidity. I don't think I like it because it doesn't feel the same to me. Like, it doesn't feel terrible by any means, but it doesn't feel great either. It does seem like it allows it to get a little muggy and a little warm, particularly in my area with my computer pumping out heat non-stop. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. ReZero starting life in another world is coming to PC and console this winter. So another ReZero anime spin-off game. We've still yet to see a lot of those succeed. They don't tend to be as well designed as they probably should be. TechRaptor has an article. Killing Floor 2 Perilous Plunder update debuts new guns and new fun, and it seems like you're playing as pirates, or playing against pirates. It does seem like Killing Floor 2 is still getting supported. which is quite shocking because I think that game is approaching 4 or 5 years old, and it must just have more of an underground following than I really thought it did. Next, we have a game on Steam here called The Dark Eye Book of Heroes, which is mostly negative already, so that's going to make it easy to not put on the follow list. It looks like it's a Diablo-esque clone. Classic role-playing together with your friends in a co-op multiplayer RPG. $29.99. Let's look at some of the reviews. Let's see. Without doubt, the worst game I've ever purchased. I'm a little shocked by how primitive this game is. You can't control your companions, so basically you just walk around the map in combat and hope for the best. Not sure if it's just too early. Great concept, terrible implementation, very buggy. Not recommended in its current state. This feels like it should be early access. Okay, well, that developer just shot themselves in the foot. See, Gamatsu has some pictures of the ReZero starting life in another world, the Prophecy of the Throne. So, this is one of those isekai animes where somebody ends up in a alternate universe. There's quite a lot of those in Japan because nobody young wants to live in Japan and Japanese society because it's not got much to offer to them, in the sense that nobody's looking forward to being a salaryman for the rest of their life and probably having less healthcare and less support. I would say that's true in a lot of countries, including the United States too. Like, that it's basically the baby boomer problem. Too many old people, not enough young people, too much politics and pandering to the old people, not enough consideration for the young people and what their life is going to look like. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article. A first-person horror multiplayer game, Nemesis Distress, has been announced for PC. It's based on the Nemesis board game, which I don't know anything about. Let's see if we can see what this trailer has to show. This doesn't look bad, but this is kind of just a cutscene. Let's see. And it seems like it's just going to be a first-person horror experience. And it doesn't seem like it's showing too much. There probably is a very good argument to say don't make a video game based on a board game because there's not enough there for a full product, but it seems like they're going to try that anyways, and we'll see how well that succeeds. See, next we have a game on Steam called Pussy Puzzle, as in cats, although I think probably this is somebody trying to sell on possibly using a word that could be misconstrued. It's $4.24. It's English only. It's nothing really. It's just a bunch of more jigsaw puzzle games. We have seen considerably fewer of those, though. Considerably fewer low-effort jigsaw puzzle games come out recently. And there might be some invisible hand at Valve that is curating the content, or it might just be that people have realized that they don't really make any money making these low effort games. Particularly if Valve just stopped the same people from selling 20 things in a month, the number of these low effort games would definitely reduce to a much more reasonable amount. Of course, it always goes back down to how many people are really seeing these games at all anyways. If you're just visiting the front page, even if you're visiting the front page and looking at the curator feeds like every single day, you still may not see these brand new games. Particularly if you're not a person like me who has a ton of games in the first place, that lowers what can be recommended by quite a bit. If you only own a dozen games on Steam, there's clearly going to be hundreds of really good AAA games that Steam could recommend to you first and foremost before it would start recommending you brand new games that have no reviews and no relevancy. Moving on, Gamasutra has a blog here for game discoverability, the summer of games, which these again are these blogs that probably from GDC and probably aren't super useful for even game publishers and game developers. At a certain point, you kind of just have to put your game out there and hope it succeeds. There is probably some level of preparation and avoidance you can do to try and avoid catastrophe, but it is just at some point going to be a risk you have to take. Alright. Well, I guess what we do is we attack here and do this, and then we do this, then we put this here, and that lets me defend even if I don't have to. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Deck of Ashes, which is tagged as a deck building RPG game. There's a lot of videos here and a lot of images that still don't want to load. I don't know how much of that is the fault of my network or if it's just a fault of the way this web page is programmed. So it looks a lot like Darkest Dungeon and Slay the Spire combined. It really does feel like a Darkest Dungeon clone. And I don't know if I really would recommend naming your publishing company Buka Entertainment. Buka, not probably an appealing name. Maybe it translates to something I don't recognize. This is $19.99. It's English and Russian full audio, which is slightly suspicious. Let's look at some of the negative reviews. We have fairly fun. The general gameplay loop is fun, but the minor UI issues weren't enough for me to say, nah, I don't want to give it a thumbs down or a thumbs up, but in the end, no is my call. Clicking to progress battles don't work half the time. You have to use the keyboard to progress actions. Another review here goes, menu UI is broken to the point of illegibility. Buttons just randomly don't work and text displayed over other text. Okay, well, then I guess we know what the problem is. So I won't bother to put Deck of Ashes on the fall list. Maybe if they fix things, maybe I'll hear about them improving and there would be something more to it. Let's go ahead and keep on attacking. Let's see what this guy's gonna do. He's gonna try and block that? Well, fine, then I'll just sacrifice that. And then I'll just put it back on the field. I've got plenty of health, so he could attack and do 5 damage perfectly fine. And if he puts something else on the field, I can just sacrifice all 3 of them. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article for the PC and PS4. World of Darkness game Wraith the Oblivion Afterlife has been announced for all major VR platforms. I don't know what World of Darkness is, though. Apparently it's a series. Must be like a VR series, though. That's why I haven't heard of it. And at first glance, just seeing these teaser trailers, it does kind of just look like it's a VR horror asset flip game. I mean, it's hard to see anything unique or special there. TechRaptor has an article here. An additional 140k Nintendo accounts were compromised. So, in March of 2020, 160 accounts were compromised by third parties. Who I think they mostly claimed that they had just guessed passwords. I don't know if there was more of a compromise than that, and Nintendo just didn't report it well. But clearly that number is nearly doubled. So, yeah. Nintendo really needs to give up its whole network infrastructure ambitions and just have Microsoft run them. Like, it should just be Xbox Live, rebranded as Nintendo Live, and or Microsoft Live Services if they don't want the Xbox branding, and Microsoft should just handle all of that, because Nintendo does not have a clue what they're doing, and they probably never will. I just don't see them being able to hire enough people to solve their network woes. Alright, well, do this. It's weird that these tokens have cards under them, but whatever. We'll just go ahead and sacrifice it. And then we'll play it. That may have been a mistake. Actually, because this guy may now have 3 to destroy my creature. What does this do? Well, it just destroys it, which puts it in the graveyard, which means I could just bring it back anyways. I could get even more health if it mattered. And I can play more mana if it matters, but I don't think any of that will really matter at all. And we are now up to gold tier 1. So with any luck, we will make it to platinum tier. Ideally, we might even make it to platinum tier 2. Or there we go. Another card. Let's keep the momentum and keep on playing. Let's see, Gamatsu has an article. Nexomon Extinct reveals 9 starter Nexomon, which this seems like this is a Pokemon style clone game. which, yeah, they look like Pokemon. We've seen quite a few attempts at Pokemon clones. This one might be more from a Japanese developer, so maybe it will have a little bit more feel to like Pokemon compared to more of the Western Pokemon clone games. But I really am kind of in a weird position where I'm not even sure what I would want as far as a PC Pokemon game, because there's about 3 different styles of PC Pokemon games I'd want to see. I would probably want to see I probably would want to see something along the lines of a return to Pokemon Red and Blue classic style of game, just improved slightly but not changed too much, just modern graphics and such. But then I probably would also want to see a Pokemon Snap remake, and then I probably would want to see something that is a major improvement of even what Shield and Sword is, where it's big stadium battles, let's go Pikachu, let's go Eevee style of gameplay. I think I would prefer to see that also. And then some of the spin-off things like Pokemon Pinball's probably not something that really matters, so I wouldn't be too upset with that. But a lot of the spin-off PC Pokemon games have been heavily focused as more MMO or online co-op games, and I personally wouldn't want to see that, but I could definitely see that there would be a large audience that would want to see that, and that is something that the actual Pokemon games are failing to really offer. I also would want to see a story in it, and I'm not sure I've seen any great stories in any of these Pokemon clone and games, and that is going to certainly be part of the problem if you are kind of lazily cloning and copying someone else's idea for a game as a My First RPG monster collector game. You probably don't have the capability of writing an amazingly good story that will intrigue and enthrall the audience. So that is yet another consideration. So yeah, I'm just hoping that at least one of these games does succeed well enough to become its own new series and grow and add things and change things. There definitely are some ideas that could be focused on and changed. In a weird way, the adult game that I play, Destiny Child, on my cell phone, it basically is a Pokemon game. Like, it's a gacha game in the same sense. You collect characters and creatures, you level them up, and you give them ways in increasing their attacks. They level up to different star levels. They don't particularly evolve, but they do have skins that change their appearance, which are separate from the leveling up. Although they also do have a awakening scenario that does change their appearance and give them a secondary costume, which you can then select which costume you want to actually see them use. So that there are some improvements there. Yeah. Of course, it is very silly and ridiculous for me to say, hey, if you're an adult and you like Pokemon, go play Destiny Child, because you probably would have to squint very hard to see the similarities. Let's do that. And then do that. And then attack. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. The Horror Adventure Return one-way trip is coming this summer. September, not summer. Find horror through time, it says. We've got a little trailer here. Maybe we can skip through it and see. Looks a little RPG Maker. Maybe there's something here that would interest me, maybe not. Yeah. After I played that one game where you were walking around and getting weird radio stations the whole time, and it was just kind of like a weird time loop story where you had some branching ending paths. I'm a little wary of stories like that where you spend a lot of time walking around and potentially just talking to other characters, because I didn't really appreciate that, and that definitely was a game that was overhyped. I want to say the name of that game was like Stories Untold, but I'm not even sure if that is the name or not. Yeah, I'm pretty bad about remembering the names of these games nowadays, even more than I used to be. It definitely felt like a game that was trying to be something close to a Stranger Things type experience. But yeah, I think a major problem with that story for me was that it was trying to trying to tell me a story of a bunch of high school kids, and I just was having a hard time relating to these high school kids as much as I think they wanted you to be able to relate to them. Need 2 more. Yeah. 2 more lands, and then we should be fine. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Mars Power Industries First Job, which looks to me like it's kind of just a strategy game, like a placement game. I don't know if there's really something here that would interest me enough, because it does seem like you're just kind of placing things to absorb energy. Like, seems like they've kind of taken the general idea of Command and Conquer, and as far as the energy gathering in Command and Conquer, and made an entire game around it. Well, I guess this game is free, and it's a demo for another game that is $2.24. So we're starting to see more cases of games putting out demos to sell other games that aren't even big enough to really justify it, or expensive enough to really justify having a demo. If we start to see more of that, that might very well be evidence that Valve has told everybody you need to have a demo. That would be kind of a silly thing for Valve to do, but I don't inherently hate the idea either. Right, well. That time he chose not to attack. And we'll make sure he regrets that as much as possible. Next, we have a game on Steam called A Hand with Many Fingers, which says it's a conspiracy historical game, adventure game. I don't know if there's really a game here, though. This kind of looks asset flippy, and it kind of looks like you're just gonna walk around trying to find evidence. Yeah. This is one of those games where it would inherently be changed quite a bit based on the length of the game. If this is a good 2-3 hour experience, fine. For $8.99, that's a little expensive, but it's not crazy. If this is a $10 10-hour experience, then it's probably not. While searching a dusty CIA archive, you uncover a real Cold War conspiracy. Every document you find leads to new research, but the archive might not be as empty as you think. Average playtime for the game is around 1 or 2 hours. So, yeah, this is going to be a hard game to justify because of its price at $8.99, but I'm putting it on the follow list and see what other people say. Meanwhile, Return to Obra Dinn is generally the same concept, but it's much longer. It's a little bit more sci-fi in its story, and a little bit more complicated than I think A Hand with Many Fingers is. But I can't say that I would hate the idea if there were more games where you were doing research into some conspiracy or some chain of events. I don't think Return to Obra Dinn really was a conspiracy in the sense that I don't think anybody conspired for the events that happened to happen in the story. I think it was more just a series of events that you then, as an insurance adjuster, had to use your magic pocket watch to figure out what had happened. And ironically, Return to Obra Dinn might be a subversive description on how insurance adjusters actually work, in the sense that the insurance adjuster is using a magic pocket watch to effectively just decide who he wanted to pay or who they didn't want to pay. But one assumes that in the world of Return to Obra Dinn, a death watch, a watch that shows you the events around a person's death, is a thing, and people trust it to tell the truth. He's going to have a hard time winning regardless of what he does, because as soon as I just get one more mana, I can pretty much just win with that alone. And he kind of knows that because he sees Bold Citadel. So unless he can do some kind of hand destruction. Well, there goes my artifact. Well, that sucks. He probably expected me to get rid of Heraldric Banner. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article here for the Switch. Grisea Phantom Trigger Volume 1 and 2 launches June 25th. Includes English, Japanese, and simplified Chinese language options. I believe this is a visual novel series. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I think I may have the zoom in a little too high. So you got anime girls and you got guns. And you find staple in the anime series. So here we go. Bullet Citadel. So just don't give me land and I win. That's all I need, is just don't give me land. Did I make it? Yes, I did. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There we go. We're having a nice Wednesday here. Whereas if I was doing a draft, I feel like there was a chance I might not be having a nice time. But we really are getting just small bits of experience since we've already gotten the big bits of experience done. And you can see we're not making great progress as far as getting up levels. We need to get 9 more levels. Here's Grisaia Phantom Trigger Volume 1 on Steam. And yeah, it is on my wish list, which means I did look at it and decide to leave it on my wish list, which honestly, I think I probably had just done a good enough job as far as the visual novels that actually made it to my wish list, to the point where I am not finding anything that I'm willing to even drop down to a fault list or remove completely. I am, however, finding plenty of other hidden object games and things as I continue to try to clean up my wish list and just reevaluate how many of these games I really want to play, how many I don't. And certainly at some point, if I just got overly ambitious and completely either purchased or removed everything I didn't want to purchase from my wish list, I could then just go through a desperate search pattern and find a bunch of bottom of the barrel games to build up a wish list to. Or I could then just start to push people supporting my Patreon, which would be nice, certainly. It would be nice if I was getting even like $100 from 100 people. I don't know if you can donate just $1 a month on Patreon, but yeah. It would be a lot nicer to get like $5 from 20 people than one person to give me $100 a month, because that one person at any point could stop supporting, where the odds are a little bit lower on the other group. Moving on, we have a game on Gamatsu says a new Cow the Kangaroo game has been announced, KAO. I don't recognize Cow the Kangaroo, but apparently it came out in 2000 for the Dreamcast. I think I probably have seen this game, but the fact that it only has like something from 2005 that came out for PC, and then it has something for the PSP, and then something that came out only in Europe in 2005. So, yeah. I feel like Cow the Kangaroo is one of the many Nintendo clone style games where back when the PlayStation in particular and the Dreamcast were trying to have they were trying to create their own Mario, their own style of kids friendly characters. PlayStation fairly quickly abandoned that that concept and did just try to attract older kids, and it was fairly seeded that Nintendo was going to be the platform for young kid gamers, and nobody was going to really compete against that. I don't think Microsoft ever legitimately really put a lot of effort into attracting young kids players, and I don't think they could even do it now. So yeah, but it wouldn't be terrible if Sony of today with the PlayStation 5 did have some characters that were actually owned by Sony instead of characters that are third-party licensees like Uncharted, or Lara Croft is multi-platform, but she's kind of fairly recognizable. God of War character, of course, is a Sony exclusive, but like again, not kid-friendly. All Sony has is Knack, and Knack is pretty much a joke in most conversations. And Microsoft is in the exact same boat where Microsoft has no kid-friendly mascots, and that is not helpful. But also, I doubt there's too many people that would want to buy their kids even an Xbox One Series S, like the cheapest Xbox One, unless they're doing it because they understand all the backward compatibility and all the like Lego games that you could get for the Xbox 360, and then get upgraded versions for an Xbox One. Because that really is the only way that it makes sense. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Holiday Mosaics Christmas Puzzles, which just came out. I guess I have to applaud this game for at least coming out at the right time if they're going to try and sell Christmas games. So often we see Christmas games come out the day of Christmas, a week or two before Christmas. This is $2.99 in a bunch of languages. There's nothing really here. It's not even widescreen, but at the very least, their timing is right. Where often we'll see Christmas games come out way too early. And maybe this is way too early, but it's not that too early. Or way too late. I could have probably activated this, and I failed to. So there goes 5 of my health because I wasn't paying enough attention. Let's see. I'm trying to just get both Citadel, and losing 5 health. It's not the way to do that. Alright. This is what I needed to do. Next, we have a game on Steam called 1971 Project Helios, which looks like it is kind of like an XCOM clone strategy game. $34.99, that is a very high price. Bunch of languages. Let's see. One negative review. I'm gonna put this on the follow list, but that price is way too high. Yeah. In fact, it doesn't even deserve to be on the follow list. We can just say you've priced yourself out of even being considered at that price, because that is just insane. Like, there's no justification for that. Alright, do I want to tap this guy and then do 3 more damage? Or do we want to just end the turn? See, next we have a game on Steam called Zack Adventure, which looks a little too MS Paint for my style. Looks like it's an adventure platformer. I'm not seeing a lot of enemies. I'm not seeing a lot of platforms in general. $13.99 English, Spain, Spanish, and a third-party EULA. That is asking a lot. He's exiling my spinning wheel. And this is just gonna stay where it is. If he manages to exile this one, I'm gonna be in trouble. But I really just need to wait till both Citadel gets drawn. Which is the problem with this deck, certainly, is that it's one successful move is to just constantly wait till Bola Citadel gets drawn. And if I don't have anything with cycling that would let me increase my odds of getting Bola Citadel. I don't have anything that pulls Bola Citadel out. Alright, so I'm going to put this on the field. And then let's see, can we still tap a creature? Yes, we can. Yeah, we're having to take it really slow. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a knowledge counter on the magic mirror, then draw a card for each knowledge counter the magic mirror has. And spells cost 1 less, and you have no maximum card and style. Wow, that is a lot. That is definitely a lot that this does, but it also would have him run out of cards fairly fast. Alright, he's just wrecked me on that one. So I'm gonna have to just choose to attack. Attack with this one, and then he either defends or he takes 4 damage. Mm-mm. 16 health. Still waiting for Bola Citadel. There was Bola Citadel. Do we want to bring back the one with flying? Let's see what happens when we attack here. So he blocks that. And we'll just end the turn. We should be fine. Next we have a game on Steam called Rebirth Fantasy, which just looks like it's an RPG game. It doesn't look particularly interesting at all. It's already mixed reviews. It's free to play. And here we have a different image called Rebirth Fantasy. I think I much prefer this softer, younger anime look of that character than this dark look. It's English only, but requires a third-party account, which is questionable. Alright, so he found another way to make it so I don't untap. And then he's scrying some cards to draw cards. He's still got like 30 cards. So is he beefing up this character so that he can win in one attack? That might be what he's trying to do. Yeah, he's gonna win if he can beef it up a couple more times. Whereas I am now doomed if I don't have the ability to kill both of these, which I don't. Alright, so put this on the field. That's as useless as anything else. And we've lost. And no, he isn't going to run out of cards. And unless there was something I could do to make him discard his entire hand and draw his entire hand multiple times. See, next we have a game on Steam here called Team Jumpers, which just looks like a low effort clone of some other co-op platforming games I've seen for 99 cents, English only. Nothing there. I will say that at least the developer does have the pride in his own work to put his name on the game. So I'll applaud that, if nothing else. Twitch support put out a statement. This has been mentioned, that DMCA takedown requests, I think mostly for people playing copyrighted music in the background, have been coming fast and furious. Particularly also, people have been allowed to make clips of your videos, and then you're still responsible for those clips, even though the clips seemingly are just segments of your own content. So yeah, Twitch just never had a good system here. They never cared. The fact that Twitch is even honoring these DMCA takedown requests is kind of shocking. But people are not happy. The party is over as far as it was. And as a YouTuber who's had to deal with Content ID copyright quite a bit, copyright claims, mostly illegitimate copyright claims that don't consider fair use. See, there is some lack of compassion that I definitely have. There's also a difference here. This applies even if you're playing it in the background or for a few seconds. It's entirely within the rights holder's discretion if and when to use takedown notifications. Recent law rulings have said no. 5 seconds is not enough. And that is why YouTube has said we are going to not consider claims for 5 seconds of music. The exact example was 5 seconds of a song is not enough to be a substantial part of the music. Now, in all fairness, a lot of people are doing the entirety of the work, and if the entire work is 5 seconds long, then I think 5 seconds at that point does probably then again fall into a harder to prove fair use claim. Fair use needs to be an affirmative defense instead of a reactionary defense, and it just is not applied that way and not written into law in the United States that way. So yeah, but it's one more nail in the coffin for all the naysayers of Twitch will say, and all the people who are supporting Twitch, of which maybe there's not too many of them left, are just going to say, yeah, people will get over it and figure it out. But Twitch really has done absolutely nothing to avoid this situation, improve on this situation, warn people, set up any information. There's a lot of things here. There's a lot of comments being made here, and they're trying to address it, but it certainly doesn't look good. Yeah, it definitely doesn't look good from Twitch's perspective, and Twitch support's Twitter feed is basically just a long list of things that don't look good, because because they are constantly having to admit that their servers went down. They're constantly having to address problems, and they don't ever have anything new to announce. No new property programs or abilities, or very rarely do they have anything new to announce that would be positive. So Twitch support is like a lot of support Twitter feeds, always negative and never positive, and that's not ideally what you'd want, but it also does stop a small percentage of people directly quote tweeting or replying to Twitch in general, although I imagine most people are still going to reply to Twitch in general. I messed up there. I should have sacrificed that guy. Alright, let's see if we can pull this off. The answer is almost certainly no. This guy's playing like a green deck that is all about being strong. So IGN had their Summer of Gaming 2020 day IGN Expo exclusive games. So for just some E3 things. So there's a game called Mortal Shell, Stadia Connect live stream. I don't know how many of these are actually even the things. It seems mostly what they want you to do is watch this entire video. Today's coverage has ended, so go back. I don't even know what video player this is. So they wanted you to watch it live, and I didn't watch it live, so okay, well, phooey to that. Let's just resolve that. Yeah, I probably should have sacrificed that, come to think of it. Well, I've lost. Let's just pass. So some of that IGN stuff I may have missed. Some of it maybe I didn't miss. Maybe I saw some articles there, but it didn't feel like IGN's announcements were a lot. But honestly, that's probably is the right way to break up E3. Is just have one group do some small announcements for 4 or 5 games, and then another day or a week later you have another group do some small announcements for 4 or 5 other games, instead of a lot of indie games getting overshadowed by giant PlayStation and EA and Microsoft presentations, which, yeah, PlayStation had kind of pulled out anyways. But even when you did have a giant Microsoft presentation, you really are focusing only on 5 games. You're just over-focusing on those 5 games. That's an interesting sound effect for a land. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Void Train gameplay trailer, which seems like it's trains flying in the air in a void. I don't know what more there is to the game, though. It seems like it is some kind of train simulator game with some kind of first-person shooting against other people and some kind of like garbage collection survival elements. Well, that's an interesting idea. It almost would be better as a story, though. By the way, it turns out Raft, the survival game that was super popular amongst streamers, it has like its first chapter out, and it is seemingly added quite a lot more story in a game that I would have assumed just would have never actually gotten any story at all, since it was just this, from the way it was being allowed to be depicted, was just this constantly going forward survival game. But yeah, a couple years ago when I was watching people play Raft, they were just on the wooden raft. They were just collecting garbage from floating by the ocean, an infinite ocean that never went anywhere or did anything, and they were just fighting the shark. Now Raft has a whole section where you get to like a communication tower, and on the communication tower are several side missions to find collectibles and get crafting ingredients, and then you go from like a communication tower to a cruise liner that is sunken, and you do the same, more missions, and then you eventually end up on like an island, or at least one island. Unfortunately, I would also say I think Raft is, even more than before, a multiplayer co-op game than a single player game. So if I was to play it and criticize it, my experience could be fairly different from somebody who is goofing around with their friends. The same could be said for things like Minecraft, where a lot of Minecraft's enjoyment and fun will come from if you're role playing and playing with your friends, compared to just doing a single player map or something along that line. See, moving on, Gamatsu has an article here for the PC, PS4, Xbox One. Mortal Shell PC closed beta test set for July 3rd to 10th. New trailer and 12 minutes of gameplay. I have not heard anything about Mortal Shell. It does seem like it is maybe like a Dark Souls-esque medieval versus monsters experience. It looks like maybe mechanical monsters of some sort. Almost a little Bayonetta-ish. So, yeah. If this is actually something that a single player can play, and it's not a lot of online multiplayer content, there might be something here. The idea of a more boss rush style of Dark Souls style game also has some appeal, because let's face it, a lot of what slowed down the Dark Souls game that I played, at least, was having to get from point A to point B, and having a lot of enemies that are just low level enemies that would get in your way or knock you off of a cliff, or just having to figure out how to get from one area to another area. Whereas if you could just teleport me through all the major boss fights in the Dark Souls series, that would be one way you could abridge the experience and still have most of it, particularly if you got rid of the grinding elements and just let the player have the equipment he should have before a boss fight, and then put him in the boss fight. Of course, that wouldn't satisfy most Dark Souls fans, but it would satisfy me as someone who is not particularly a hardcore Dark Souls fan. TechRaptor has the same article. Hero Souls like Mortal Shell beta arrives next month. Heroes Souls-like is a weird phrase. I don't know if that means that there will be hero class characters that you can pick from instead of building your own character. which that could be a little annoying. But by far, it seems like the biggest news that came out of that presentation was that Alex Kidd in Miracle World DX has been announced for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC, due out in Q1 of 2021. Who is Alex Kidd? Kind of don't know. I recognize the name. He, I think, is pretty much just a platformer character that, sure, if you want to, I think maybe it's Sega originally, is when it came out for, or Game Gear. This doesn't look terrible, and particularly we do need more kid-friendly games. But I don't know how many people really would end up playing Alex Kidd. And it seems like maybe this is just a remake of an already existing Alex Kidd game compared to a continuation. And I feel like you probably should ask yourself whether or not Shantae is a better style of those kinds of games to actually have. Okay. Yeah, I think we've got it. So one can defend one way or another. It doesn't matter. But most definitely, if you told me that a new Alex Kidd game was going to be announced yesterday, I would have just said, who? Who's Alex Kidd? I have no idea who that is. Okay. Let's go ahead and attack with everything. And we'll see what he wants to do. And then we figured that would happen, so we'll sacrifice that. Bring that back up. Now he's down to 2, down to 5. Yeah, even if I am not going to be able to activate Bola Citadel, which still a decent chance I will be able to because I have another Bola Citadel. I could just attack with everything. And we'll just now sacrifice everything for our standard Bola Citadel victory. And he conceded before it actually activated everything. Still getting a lot of like slow black screens, which seems weird. Like, feels like Magic Arena just have screwed up some stuff as far as loading images. Gamatsu has an article. Observer System Redux has a 9-minute gameplay walkthrough. It's due out for the PS5 and Xbox Series X. This really, I believe, if I recall correctly, is just a remake of the first Observer game. So it's not even really a remake as much as more just a remaster. So yeah, if I own Observer, the original version, I may now be in this weird position where I'd prefer to play the Redux version, and they're probably not going to give me a free upgrade to the Redux version, because if they were going to do that, they would have already done that. So it does feel like a game that has been remastered too early, whereas a lot of other games don't have that problem. That seems like it's perfectly fine if a game is 4 or 5 years old to get a remaster, but if you're getting down to 3 years or 2 years, or if your game just wasn't super popular in the first place, which Observer is definitely in that category also. That being said, the creators of the game Lust for Darkness, as I was looking at that on my wish list, and I think I'm going to take it off the wish list if I haven't already, they are effectively making a spiritual remake of that game called, what was it? Lust for the Underworld or something? Where they're going to try and put a lot more gameplay in it. I watched several reviews of Lust for Darkness, and it's just like, yeah, this game is generic and simplistic, and it's short, and it's not that good. Which kind of sucks, because as one of the only games out there willing to go to the extreme as far as adult content, with Agony being the only other game that's willing to go to the extreme that has come out. There's still Scorn that I believe is in development, and maybe a couple others. None of those games have been reviewed well as actually being good games, which I don't know why at some point these people don't just decide to make like animated interactive stories instead of video games. If they can't make video games, just make a VR movie. Moving on, we have a game on. We have the article from TechRaptor: Become the Demon Queen in Demon Turf. Let's see how this trailer looks. Riding a railroad, 3D imagery. I don't know if this is a platformer or what. Yeah, it seems like it's a platformer with a flat cardboard look to it. It looks like you do quite a bit here. Seems like the little demon girl can move herself around and transform herself quite a bit. There might be a platformer in that interests me. Speaking of platformers, I somehow ended up getting a whole bunch of Mirror's Edge, Mirror's Edge trading cards for a badge. I don't know if that's just because they just added that as a feature and I've already played Mirror's Edge, or if I had sales that were supposed to purchase those on the Steam Marketplace and I've just kind of forgotten about them, or what. It could be either. Could be that I just got it. It wouldn't be a random booster pack because it's not a booster pack. It didn't open up like that. I just have 4 individual trading cards, and I don't think somebody would just be able to gift me those trading cards without doing some kind of trade or getting some kind of notification around that. So yeah, I am fairly confused as to where I got those, but I'm not upset by it by any means. I can turn them to dust at the worst case scenario. At the best case scenario, they're help fill out some kind of badge to raise my Steam level, which is already ridiculously high. And the whole system is silly and pointless. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Dawn of Fear, which is tagged as an inventory management game amongst other things. It feels like this is somebody's attempt to actually make a Resident Evil 1 kind of clone game. $24.49. I'm going to put it on the following list: English, Spain, Spanish. Yeah, there might be something to it. We'll see. Yeah. I also just watched a reviewer review a bunch of the Resident Evil games. And yeah, I'm wondering if I was to go back and try to play Resident Evil 4, whether I would actually be able to get the game to play all the way through. I'm in a weird position where I'm not sure I didn't actually succeed at some point in playing all of Resident Evil 4 from the beginning to the end. And I could do a relatively quick search on my own YouTube page to find out if that's the case, but I think I only spotlighted it a couple of times, and then I got it to a point, at one point where it looked like it wasn't going to stammer and stagger and drop frame and have incorrect frame pacing, but I don't think I got to the point where I played the entirety of the game. If I did, I probably rushed through it. And certainly I would be more than willing to go back and play it again. I probably need to play the original Resident Evil games, though. I need to learn, since I haven't really played any of those in any fashion, I need to learn about them and experience them and know what that first generation of Resident Evil games was all about, knowing that they are very different types of games compared to Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6, and 7 is kind of gets back to what, a third generation of Resident Evil games are going to be, and then the remasters are kind of that third generation again. Here's some gameplay footage of Demon Turf from Gematsu. It doesn't look terrible. The camera might be a little awkward, but it does look like you do some fighting, maybe some racing, and a lot of platforming. And it does seem like it has a nice art style to it that is kind of unique and different. If anything, I should have probably found sometime in Halloween to play Resident Evil 4, but I don't even think Resident Evil 4 is a scary enough game to need to be played during the Halloween month. Speaking of scary games, the person who worked on Dead Space is teasing, he was like the writer on Dead Space. He's teasing that he wrote on a new game for the past 2 years that will supposedly soon be announced, but it's not going to be Dead Space 4, we know that, or a remake or reboot of Dead Space, although that would be amazing if they did reboot Dead Space and said, hey, we're gonna go back to square one. The whole COVID-19 situation would play a little bit differently now in Dead Space, where you had the Unitarians intentionally or unintentionally embracing the signal that turned them into necromorphs. So it might be a little bit more politically charged a story than you would think. But I don't think anybody can legitimately make an argument if you're just telling the exact same story that was told years ago. And it hardly is the first time that some religious group somewhere has refused to do something that science told them was medically healthy. Like Jehovah's Witnesses, even now, and pretty much always, have always refused most medical treatment. Moving on, Gamma Sutra has an article. A Riot exec is under internal scrutiny for a post blaming George Floyd's death on his lifestyle. This is issue number 1,450,000 of somebody tweeting something they shouldn't have and getting in trouble with somebody. And yeah, it's famous people, anybody that works for a big company, anyone that even works for a small company. Like, honestly, if I just ran a gas station, I would tell my employees, you need to private all media things, all Twitter feeds, all Facebook things, any kind of Discord chats, anything like that. Any conversations you have that come back and cause controversy or conflict or trouble for this business, and you're going to be immediately fired. No questions asked. Doesn't matter if it's your fault or not. And depending on what state I'm running that business, that would be allowed. Some states that wouldn't be allowed. If it's a right to work state, which means really the employer has the right to fire you at any point with no explanation, you can get away with that. But yeah, I would much prefer to tell my employees to protect themselves and keep everything private and not post anything controversial or retweet or even like things that are controversial, just for their futures alone, let alone for the business reasons, versus having to do what so many other companies seem to love to do, which is have some overpaid, underqualified HR person spend their entire day just trolling people's Facebook posts to see if they said something nasty about the boss or something. It's just, that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that any of that happens. And if you're an employee, you should say, I don't have anything. I don't have any Facebook profiles. I don't do any of that social media stuff. Even if you do, you should just say you don't, and just have that deniability immediately. And then at the very least you can say, well, somebody else made that account and somebody else posted those things and they're pretending to be me. This is impersonation. This isn't me. But that would be my recommendation to anybody working at a job, and jobs should just quit it. Like, they should just give a general warning, and that's all they really need to say. If something comes back on you controversial, we're not going to support you. We're a soulless corporation. We're not a team. We're not a family. We may be a working team, but we're not a family. We're not going to stick with you. We're not going to bear the burden of it, because that's the truth of the situation. It's just companies don't want to admit that to be the truth. Moving on, Gamasutra has an article. Unity report shows a massive spike in video game business due to COVID-19, which is probably to say that a lot of people started working on Unity projects and purchased Unity assets. Oddly, though, we haven't seen a lot of asset flip games come out to Steam or anything. So if people had free time and they're making projects, either these projects are going to come out in 6 months to 4 years from now, or they are just not going to come out ever, and people just wasted their time as they were stuck social isolating. Which I imagine a large percentage of it was people just wasting their time. I definitely have some projects that I don't know if I'm going to get back to, as the world seems to have kind of changed, and my tolerance for having extra time and ability to have extra time seems to ever increasingly decrease. So I'm just busier and busier, or less effective and less efficient, non-stop. TechRaptor has an article here. Crosscode releases for consoles on July 9th. We've seen a lot of talk of Crosscode. This is it's the Mega Man Battle Network game, I thought? Nope, apparently not. Apparently it's a top-down twin-stick shooter with some puzzle elements. Yeah, interesting. It looks interesting. It's not the game I thought it was, though. Okay. So, it does certainly go to make a great point that even though I've heard lots of talk about crosscode. I still can't keep it in my head what it is, because there's just so much that comes out. It's just non-stop. And then you run into the problem of the vast majority of those games that come out still not being good. So that becomes a problem too. TechRaptor has an article here. Metal Hellsinger brings demon slaying metal to first person shooting fans. Okay, this looks kind of like an attempt at something like Doom. Although they say it's Doom, Bullet Storm, and Heavy Metal Rhythm. I can't hear the audio on these. I should probably spend some time. Yeah, if I ever have some extra time, I probably should spend some time to unmute the audio so that I could hear it play. But the vast majority of the time, I don't care. Like, if this has an awesome heavy metal riff, that's fine. Metal Hellsinger looks fine as a game and an interesting idea as a game. Although I'm not sure what I particularly felt was missing from the Doom 2016 reboot. So I'm not sure if Metal Hellsinger is giving me more of what I liked or what I didn't like. I think I am just kind of always in this weird position where I liked Doom for the first 5 to 20 minutes that I played it, and for the first shareware episode. But at no point did I really ever try to get all the way to the end, and at no point did I try to get good with that system and beat the entire game on nightmare difficulty. I liked finding the secrets, but in the original Doom game, there was too many of them, and I think even in the 2016 reboot, there was too much of them. I'd say the story is even a little bit weak in the Doom 2016 story, and I think that is intentional. And I, as a fan of story in video games, I probably suffer a bit from that being an issue too. So what it's offering, what Doom 2016 offered, is probably right for the audience of Doom, but wasn't right for me because I wasn't really the audience of Doom. Except for the multiplayer. Nobody wanted the multiplayer, it seems. So if I was to play Metal Hellsinger, it was more of a high action first person shooter game closer to Quake, probably would just take me further and further away from my comfort base. But I'd still be willing to play it. There's nothing so objectionable with its gameplay style. We would just have to kind of look at it from the perspective of this is probably not my bag. Can we activate this and eat this? Do we need to activate and eat this? Let's go ahead and do it. Although that probably was a mistake. There we go, we can just attack with everything. And let's see. Go ahead and sacrifice this. And put this back. The Australian Classification Board has a listing for Nintendo Kart Racers 2 Grand Prix, which seems to have been approved for rated G, and it doesn't seem to say what platforms it does, but I don't know how interesting Nintendo Kart Racers 2 is to most people, but I guess it is a small scoop to say nothing else. Yeah, I don't think I want to... We made it to Platinum. Look at that. Let's see if we can make it to Platinum Tier 3, or if this is where you start. I don't know if we really want to go through more than maybe one letter on the wishlist cleanup. It's been fairly long and taken a long time to get that daily quest done. And we have 9 wins, which means we've been doing really well, but not amazingly. We never do as well as I'd like to. I'd like to be able to be done in 2.5 hours every time I stream, but it doesn't seem like it happens. Moving on, Gamasutra has an article here. Ahead of the PS5 showcase, Microsoft has confirmed Hellblade 2 will run on Unreal 5. Good for that. I know the Unreal YouTube channel put out a sizzle reel showing several of the things that run on Unreal Engine, and I assume a lot of those are Unreal Engine version 5. Inside that sizzle reel, they did include footage from their demo, which they put a different name on it, it looked like, so I don't know if some of that footage from that demo is actually going to show up in some kind of game, or if they just renamed the demo or put a name on the demo. I don't recall it actually having a name. TechRaptor has the same article. IGN Summer of Gaming unveils Alex Kidd in Miracle World DX. So apparently this came out in '86 originally, was the first Alex Kidd's. It's a HD remake of the first game. Okay. It's not super interesting, but on the other hand, if Nintendo came out and said that they were going to make an HD remake of Super Mario Bros. 1, and it was going to be a directly faithful remake of the entirety of that game without really adding too much or changing anything, that would be slightly different than what they did with Super Mario Bros. World or Super Mario Bros. Land for the Wii U. Although I don't know if that really is the right direction for Nintendo or Alex Kidd. It probably was smarter for Nintendo to just constantly say, hey, we'll make something that looks and feels somewhat like those old games, but we actually have done the play testing, and we actually know that people would not enjoy playing Super Mario Bros. 1. And the fandom that would enjoy playing that, we can just sell the original Super Mario Bros. 1 to them again, or we could let them play it on an emulator and turn a blind eye to that. Which that was also a thought with Resident Evil 4, is that maybe the best way to play Resident Evil 4 on Windows 10 right now would be to just pull out the GameCube version ROM and emulate it, instead of playing the PC HD remake version. Well, this guy, he is boned. I don't think he can do anything. 3-27. Now, we were on a win streak, so do we get 2 pips? Doesn't seem like it. So we'll have to see if we can maintain a win streak to get multiple pips, or if at Platinum tier you're just always going to get 1 pip. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article here. Werewolf the Apocalypse Earthbound is an Epic exclusive on PC. I haven't heard too much of this game. I don't know if I've heard about this game at all. A game where you play as a werewolf. In an apocalyptic universe. There might be something around that idea. But I don't know. And it being an Epic Game exclusive really just means that I won't even bother to think about playing the game until it's no longer an Epic Game exclusive, and probably 6 months after that point, just for good measure, to be outside the re-release window of the point when it comes to Steam. We are still at that point kind of with Borderlands 3, which Borderlands 3 does have a new content coming out, and it's continuously not having any kind of hype around it for any of these new elements and this new content, just because of all the bad press and the Epic Store exclusivity around the game. They almost certainly lost millions in sales due to just Randy Pitchford in general. Moving on, Gematsu has an article. Chivalry 2 adds PS5, Xbox Series X, PS4, and Xbox One versions. Supports cross-play across all platforms. Not sure I really want to play any of these chivalry-style games where you're medieval characters playing around it. Like, the general idea makes sense and looks interesting, but the actual gameplay mechanic of sword swinging in what looks like is mostly a multiplayer game anyways, and an MMO anyways, that just doesn't appeal to me. So, and it does definitely feel like the true course of the events there was that games like Totally Accurate Battle Simulator and Chivalry and For Honor all tried to come out and tried to eat up a market that just did not really exist. So it does feel like there's just this incredibly tiny fandom of those style of games that are being overserved by multiple style copies of different games. Moving on, Gematsu has the Summer of Gaming 2020. That's the schedule. June 10th will be a YouTube event, which, yeah, this went on for like 5 hours, and they have the entirety of it. And it was going to reveal several things, and apparently they haven't updated any of that yet. And then June 11th is going to reveal some more stuff. And Samurai Jack game is the only one I even recognized. And June 12th is going to reveal some more stuff. I know 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim is more of a Japanese game, but most of these seemed like they weren't Japanese or what games, so maybe they're putting the Japanese games on the third day. And then seems like it's just going to keep on going all the way to June 25th, although it does seem like there might be some skips there where they are just not going to bother to have any announcements during the weekdays. So it's an interesting idea to have this just long-running series of announcements to try to just have as much hype as possible. But it's all going to be happening in the middle of the summer when the Steam Summer Game Sale happens, so it's going to be questionable whether these announcements for new games that are coming out lead to people going to Steam and wishlisting those games or following those games, or whether people are going to be distracted watching the IGN Summer of Gaming versus shopping for Steam, or maybe people won't be shopping for Steam too much at all. I wouldn't be surprised if that's actually a big possibility. I'll quickly say Magic Arena has the Cube Draft card list, which will just tell you all the cards that are in the Cube Draft that I think is coming in the next couple of days. I don't know if there's anything specifically more to say around that idea, though. Like, you would have to just spend more time than I would be willing to spend to go through that whole list and look up all those cards and figure out if any of those cards change anything too much. It would be informative if you were trying the rare draft. You would then be able to figure out fairly quickly whether you have a good chance of getting the cards you're looking for, or if you're trying to win the draft, it might increase your odds a little bit. But for a player like me, my eyes would just glaze over and I would just try to play the game as best I can. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Drekoroker. I don't know how you'd pronounce that. Drekoroker. Dusk of Dragon. We haven't seen a lot of RPG Maker games that look just like RPG Maker games lately. Even this doesn't really look like a RPG Maker game. This might be using RPG Maker RX, or MX, or whatever the new version is. But yeah, this does look like an early access free RPG from English and supporting English language and Spain Spanish and Latin American Spanish. Yeah, that does not strike me as particularly quality though, so that's not going to make it to the fall list. In fact, we still are having an extremely low number of things that are making it to the fall list. That was probably a mistake, but we'll see. Next we have a game on Steam called Wooden Ocean, which does look like a dark screenshot game. Yeah, nothing I'm seeing here looks interesting. It's just dark and ugly. $19.99, English only. I still have way too many tabs and my chair is starting to get uncomfortable. Although, in all fairness, the chair is still doing way better than the old chair. It's just not doing great. And I'm not sure I'll ever find one that really does great. See, next we have a game called Frag, which apparently is a turn-based tactics game, but by the looks of it, to me, it feels like it's super busy, which we typically see in like Chinese games. Early access, $5.99, English only. Yeah, well, apparently it's an English super busy, overly complicated game. Again, nothing there interesting me. TechRaptor has an interesting article here. Rikers Island inmates are kept busy with off-brand game consoles. These are these cheap Chinese Game Boy clones that are Famiclones that have like 901 games. Apparently that's compensation for no visitation during the coronavirus. I'm sure somebody got those real cheap and they wanted to keep the guys busy. And frankly, it's probably better than anything else they were going to offer them, so I imagine the inmates are going to make the best do with that. I don't think Rikers Islands is particularly full of the... I think it's an actual prison, so it's like convicted people and probably slightly more violent. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a medium security prison compared to a minimum security prison. But also, there is undoubtedly an issue worth mentioning that COVID-19 is, from what I hear, spreading quite a lot amongst prisoners. And the prisons, of course, don't have the resources and the ability to protect the prisoners or treat them. Moving on, TechCrafter has an article. Call of Duty Black Ops 2020 rumors are intensifying. Okay. Like, I don't know how many people are going to be hyped about that. I don't know how many people are still interested in Call of Duty as a series. Next, we have a game on Steam called Yeti Game Engine, which seems like somebody has either asset flipped a game engine, or they actually made a game engine and then they're selling it on Steam like it's a game for $5.99 in early access with allegedly a bunch of language support. There's nothing here that looks worthwhile. No reason why you would learn to program with the Yeti engine compared to just programming with Unity to do the same kind of games, or Unreal. Even Unreal could handle those kinds of games. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. The Young Maiden novel, My Butler, is coming to Switch June 18th. Otome means Young Maiden. And this seems like a fairly new one, because that is really sharp animation. Let's see, we want to sacrifice this. And then put this back on the field. I'm going to have to pay attention or I'm going to start running out of time. Let's go ahead and attack with this. I think I'm safe, because he'll have to block, and then that ruins it for him. Like, honestly, if he attacks with everything, I could probably block with these three and still win. Here we have a game on Steam called Whatever Land Prologue, another demo of what looks like maybe something that could be a point-and-click adventure of some interest. It's free to play, English full audio. But man, boy, am I not willing to... Apparently we won't be getting extra pips. I'm really not willing to play these demos, these prologues, as before covering a game. So if video games really did go down this route where every game has a prologue and you really need to play the prologue, I would be fairly upset with that move, because that would just add more work and more research needed before you can even play a game. Like, every now and then I will play a game or purchase a game and realize, oh, actually this is the third in a series, and if I was going to be really good, I should play the game in the right order. This is kind of a perfect starting couple of hands. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Untitled Video Game. I would think that Steam would stop them from naming their game Untitled Video Game, or at least have a conversation or flag a game. And you can see in the screenshot, this is Princess Zeldenia, and one of the responses as well, "Excuse me, Princess." So they're making just direct references to Zelda. The game itself doesn't look too terrible, but it feels like a troll game, so I can't really trust it. It's $7.49, it's English only, and it's just got too many red flags that it's a troll game. And they say it's a parody game filled with funny cliches, stereotype characters, and nonsense that we used to sing in games, which I don't feel like that's a good way to make a game, because it really just sounds like you had no ideas that were unique, and so instead of creating something, you're just going to copy something else. See, OpenCritic has this article. The writer of Dead Space is teasing a new game, but it's not a new Dead Space. This is Anthony Johnston. It'll be revealed at the PlayStation Future of Gaming event this week, he says. So yeah, we'll have to see what he's got to say. What gets revealed. I wouldn't be surprised one bit if it's not even a horror game. So it's just he wrote some other game completely different. Which it would be weird to read a Stephen King romance novel for sure. If Stephen King did write a romance novel instead of horror novels that he's known for writing. So if a game writer did write a different kind of game that wasn't a horror game and they were known for doing a horror game, that does feel weird. On the other hand, it feels like the director, creator of Resident Evil 4 pretty much was tired of making Resident Evil games, even when he made Resident Evil 4, and then that was good, but then he was kind of tired of making more games like Resident Evil 4 when he made The Evil Within, and The Evil Within, and when he stepped down and wasn't really in charge of making Evil Within 2. So sometimes the writers just don't know what they want to do or what they're good at, or they just don't want to do what they're good at, and I certainly could understand that. If I was known for being great at something that I just was not passionate about, that is a terrible situation to be in, even if what you do is successful. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article here for the PS4, PC, Switch, and Xbox One. Orion, the Secret of Seasons has been delayed to September. It's no longer coming out July 28th. Again, a game that I've almost certainly heard about and then immediately forgotten about. I think I probably need Bola Citadel fairly quickly if I'm going to win this one. Next, we have a game on Steam called Dreamback VR, which is a VR horror game with some horror asset flip elements and some weirdly angled arms. Requires VR. It's $22.49. They're saying it's like the Evil Within 2. Yeah. By the way, I did watch someone play Evil Within 2, and they played it on like Nightmare difficulty, and they found it was even easy at that point. And so I was at casual difficulty, and I just breezed through the game, and that was a major problem, definitely, with it. But even if I had a little bit more challenge, I think the vast majority of my response to the Evil Within 2 would have been the same. That it would have just been kind of a generic action zombie game. I'm going to put Dreamback VR on the fault list, and because it does look at least moderately visually polished. OpenCritic has an article here that No Man's Sky is coming to Xbox Game Pass tomorrow with crossplay, which we are definitely in a weird position where No Man's Sky probably is a decent game finally, but it's probably too little, too late. So, I don't know what just happened there. I think the game glitched. Because both Citadel seemed to be indicating that I could do something, and then it seemed like it stopped me from being able to do that. And I lost. There goes my pip. But we made it to Platinum Tier 4, and if we just consistently every month make it to Platinum Tier 4, that's not terrible. That is not terrible by any means. Gamatsu has an article here. Working Zombies launches June 18th for the Switch. A busy working action game. I don't know what they mean by working action game, though. Seems like it's one of those cook serve delicious type games where you're running and serving things as zombies. I don't know if the zombies really mean anything or change the story in any way. Yeah. Yeah, it looks like it's too much of a multiplayer game to really interest me, but it's a funny clone of the game Overcooked, which I think is basically the best comparison. TechRaptor has an article here. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night roadmap of new content is coming through 2020. Bloodstained crosses on 1 million units sold. So, successful for sure, but not a huge success like Minecraft or anything at like 500 million units sold. And I really need to figure out what the scales really are for games like that. Like, anytime I see that a game has crossed a threshold of a certain number of units sold, I need to put it into like an Excel sheet so that I can keep in my mind if 1 million units sold is a good number or a bad number. 1 million units sold for a Bloodstained Ritual Night is a good number, but it would be a terrible number if you were talking a EA sports title or something. That would be a horrible number at that for them. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Curious Expedition 2 prepares to take a journey this June, which I guess this might be a sequel to a game called Curious Expedition. I guess. I may have heard something about it. And they're just doing like a straight up Zoom call. Yeah, I don't recognize a game that looks anything like this. Might be an interesting kind of adventure game. I don't even know what you would really call it, whether it's an adventure game or whether it's a more RPG roguelike game. Might be more of a roguelike game. So here we have another religious troll game on Steam, Jesus Strikes Back Judgment Day Remastered. I don't know if there was an original version of this game. It's selling for $4.24. There's another game that came out called Jesus Strikes Back 2: The Resurrection. This is clearly a troll game. You can even see troll meme icons as far as the achievements, and it's allegedly got English full audio. Yeah. I don't know why Valve wants to put these obnoxiously provocative games on their storefront. Like, it's one thing to bend over backwards after a lot of hemming and hawing and let hatred onto your storefront, but when you know it's a nobody publisher who's got nothing really to say and no game really to sell, and they're just selling an asset flip first-person shooter, you probably could just say we don't want your business. Particularly when you know Valve is willing to say that for plenty of other types of content creators, or at least specifically adult game content creators and Japanese content creators. So they're willing to curate in one way, but not willing to curate in a way that would probably be a lot more helpful for most people. And a game like Jesus Strikes Back couldn't be an itch.io game, or somebody can host that on their own website if they want to. It doesn't need to be on the storefront. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. My Heroes 1 Justice 2 receives an English dub. So apparently the fighting game will come with an English dub, although I'm not sure that really means much because a lot of these anime fighting games turn out to be particularly bad. Let's see, Gamatsu has more information on the Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. A boss revenge mode and a chroma wheel update will launch June 23rd. And here's the little Twitter image saying thanks for 1 million units sold. It makes it certainly an easier decision to not have purchased Bloodstained Ritual of the Night at this point, considering it's still getting more content. But you also are in a weird position where for people who had pre-ordered Bloodstained, how many of them are going to spend the time to go back and play it a second time with the new updates? The question is probably lower than you would think. Well, let's end our turn. I don't know if I can win here, but I can try. I can tap that. Here we have a game on Steam called The Pillar, which seems like it is a straight clone of The Witness, although different kinds of puzzles and probably smaller in scope. Escape room game leading to a mysterious to Mystery Island. Okay, I'll put this on the follow list. I like The Witness. This is $13.49, which is cheaper than The Witness. Apparently it has full audio for all of the languages, which probably means nobody talks in the entire game, which I would believe. It does seem like there's quite a lot of stuff here. Oddly, they're not even comparing it to The Witness. They're comparing it to a bunch of random other games. Let's see. So I'll put that on the follow list. We'll see what the reviews have to say. And if it turns out to be a decent puzzle game, I love puzzle games, so I'll be more than willing to give it a chance. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article, Disintegration Review. So apparently there was a game called Disintegration, which I have heard absolutely nothing about. And it looks kind of like it's a first-person shooter strategy game, although it seems like it kind of changes the way it looks quite a bit. They give it an 8.0. They said, Disintegration's meaty shooter campaign invites players into a unique world that's well worth exploring, but quirks in its gameplay and storytelling hold it back from true greatness. Its pros are that it is a unique and fascinating sci-fi world. It has a challenging AI that's fun to fight and an enjoyable lengthy story campaign. Its con is that its lore often goes unexplained, its preset loadouts hurt replayability, and it has a ho-hum multiplayer suite, which wouldn't really affect me much. So, apparently this is available on Steam or coming out on Steam. So I need to do some research and figure out if I can find it on Steam, since they didn't bother to put a link to it. This is going to be a hard one to win. Yeah, I've probably lost. Probably, but not guaranteed. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here for PC. Monster Crown launches via early access on July 31st. This is yet another Pokemon looking game. Which, okay. Although, you could make something that looks like it's a Pokemon looking game and then have very few monsters of any real interest. They wrecked me somehow. I wasn't paying enough attention. Yeah. And we're down to the low level of Platinum Tier 4. I think that'll be the last game we play for today. Yeah, looking at this trailer, it looks like a modern take on Pokemon and the original Pokemon games, and that doesn't look terrible. Let's see, 200 base monsters to create which you can then breed and fuse to make new species. Interesting. 11 out of 15 victories is definitely past the point that you would get XP, because you only get XP ups for the first 10. And we only really went up one level. So, at what point does it really suck if this expired in 14 days and we don't have it done? Well, if we don't get that final mastery, then we miss out on a skin. That really doesn't matter too much. If we missed out on this pack, that would kind of suck. These rare cards are helpful. A pet doesn't matter at all to me. This pack doesn't is slightly helpful, but kind of pointless too, because Corset 2020 is about to go away. Ravnica is about to go away, so these packs are really useless. Ideally, and almost certainly, we will get up to rank 80, if not several more ranks. I don't think we're going to get up to rank 100 or anything like that, unfortunately. And then, card-wise, what we have collected is we got one more copy of this, which is a Ravnica card. One more copy of this, one copy of this, which is a expansion I don't even recognize from that symbol. The fourth copy of this. And that's it. Like, everything else was just duplicates that just go into that secret treasure chest that they don't even talk to you about. As far as wild cards, we have a decent number of them, certainly, but we're not running into 60 mythic rare wild cards or anything like that, and we're low on common wild cards. I would prefer to get a lot more common wild cards than get cards that are just duplicates that are not really leading up to anything. Anyways, we have a Gamatsu article here for PC and Switch. A game called Roki Folk Song has a teaser trailer. A narrative adventure game. Let's see. So, yeah, that looks from that one screenshot slightly interesting. But do we really need to care about teaser trailers of games? Kind of looks like a Double Fine game, but we know it's not a Double Fine game. Let's keep on going here. We have about 10 more games. Here we have Sock Pop SO8 Popo's Tower. This is the person that flooded Steam sometime about 6 months ago with just every day they'd put out another low effort garbage game, and that's pretty much what this is too. So what really sucks about Sock Pop Collective being the developer and publisher is that there's literally been nothing to stop them from flooding Steam with low effort games. Unless they were put on some kind of secret double probation and they were suspended from publishing any games for 6 months. It seems like they were able to every day list 2 or 3 games, and then they ran out of games to list for sale. And then now 6 months later, they've got some more low effort demo games to sell. Gamatsu has an article. Grisaia Phantom Trigger Volume 3 is coming to Switch this summer, which we had already talked about Phantom Trigger 1 and 2. So, yeah, the problem with naming a series like that, volume numbers, and still have volumes coming out, is that most people won't know if you're ever going to get a complete series there. It may not really matter as visual novels. Maybe each individual game is a complete story, but it may, particularly when you call them volumes. That's a problem. That's why most games don't call them volumes, and instead call them like some side title, subtitle. Gamatsu has an article here for the Switch. Hypersports R has been canceled. It's no longer in development. I recall vaguely seeing this a long time ago, but not super surprised that it got canceled. They probably were trying to have it come out during the 2020 Olympics, which you'd think that would mean they would have more time to work on it, but they probably realized they weren't getting anywhere either. Gamatsu has an article here. A Hatsune Miku Project Diva Megamix news live stream is set for June 17th. So new announcements for that game, and Hatsune Miku, who never seems to quit as far as putting out more and more content. Here we have a game on Steam called Newton's Cradle puzzle game, which might be a little too simplistic as a single screen Unity puzzle game. I can say I don't know how this really would play at the first look of it, though, and it's $1.49. So I'll put it on the follow list, and we'll see if anybody actually reviews it. That will be the big question. Certainly is how many people really do review it. And I guess since we are in June, it has been 6 months since January. Since June is the 6th month. Playing the game 999 taught me that, because, yeah, they named the character June because her number was 6. She had a bracelet with a number 6 on it. So it would be about the time to do a fall list cleanup, but I probably will put it off until December. Or I might do it in the next couple of months and then decide to air that footage in December. Anyways, here we have a game called Rolling Arcade, and while these rolling pachinko games are slightly interesting in real world, they are absolutely completely uninteresting in virtual worlds, and they're only slightly interesting if you happen to be in an arcade and bored. It's 89 cents discounted. Yeah, I don't. It's not even good quality graphics. And then we have a game on Steam called Parisian Nights 2: The Moonlight Veil. Just to point out that there are still hidden object games getting released, although the number's pretty small now. We are getting like one every couple of days. This is $11.99. So I don't know if Big Fish Games in particular, since they put out a ton of hidden object games, I don't know if they are perhaps slowing down on their own site, or if they're just kind of slowing down putting things on Steam, because they seem to put their old games on Steam to get more sales, get a bump. And that brings me to the Humble Bundle, which, let's see, I'm not sure if there's a games bundle here. I'm looking at the icons. Yeah, there's a plug-in digital and Dear Villagers bundle. So if you pay $1 more, you get Away, Journey of the Unexpected, Splasher, Implosion, Striker's Edge. Those games might not be a bad deal for me because I probably don't own any of them. If you pay over the average of $4.64, you get Roof Rage, Moonspark, Streets of Red, Devil's Dare Deluxe, and Old School Musical. Then if you pay $11, you get a game called Hover, Dead and Violent, and Sherlock Holmes and the Devil's Daughter. Actually, you've got a great deal there, since this game basically never goes on sale anyways. And I don't think Dead and Violent is too bad of a game either. So for those two games for $11, you then get what is a collection of 6 or 7 other games that are not really that interesting, but something there, to something of slight interest. So yeah, I was going to mention, but I can't show it to you because even the thumbnail of this game, called Lust from Beyond, is probably not YouTube family friendly. It's an image of a topless woman who is holding a severed hand to one of her breasts with her right hand. So there's 3 hands, which ideally, I guess that the idea there is people wouldn't realize that's what they were saying at first glance. But yeah, it is coming soon, and it is kind of the spiritual reboot, retry of Lust from Darkness, with better gameplay, hopefully, and hopefully better than Agony did it, or any of those other games that tried to do that. But yeah, I did want to mention that because I hadn't seen any notice of that. And yes, they do have a prologue. Unfortunately, though, that really, if that game is rated well, I would be able to put it on my wish list, but I probably wouldn't be able to censor it enough to play it on YouTube. Even if it had like an internal censoring system, I don't think I'd be able to censor it enough to do a full playthrough, and that's all I do is full playthroughs. So yeah, you could probably get 5 minutes of footage to talk about it. But I definitely do want to see more Western, more adult style games come out, particularly if they try to be higher quality. Alright, and are we going to try and clean up my wish list some more? Minecraft just sold 200 million copies in 11 years, where The Witcher sold 50 million copies. Okay. Yeah, I see what the problem was. We were halfway through. We had done the L's, so let's do one letter on the wish list and call it a day. Meanwhile, while that decides whether it wants to load images or not, let's go ahead and change our avatar. 19 days. Is there anything we could do with any of these decks? Not really. And we can't look at the new cards. They have made a change here. Core Set 2019 is now being added to Historic and no longer being labeled as Standard. No, that was always the case. I'm wrong about that. Yeah. I'm trying to see if these images will load up or not. Can we see cards that we have either less than 4 copies of or haven't crafted? And I'm not sure we can do that. So how many cards do we really have still to collect in total as far as Magic Arena? We probably are somewhere around 500 or 600 cards, some of which will go into Historic and not be really necessary, some of which will be redundant and not really necessary. And I'll probably never have a good system to know if something's redundant and not necessary. For instance, if I have a Core 2019 reprint of something like Spy, I probably will just end up getting 4 copies of both of those variations. But yeah, as far as the cards that we have gotten, the packs that we have opened and the expansions that we've dipped our toes into, this isn't a huge number of cards. Not really. Maybe we're hitting closer to 2,000 because a lot of these have like 3 copies that you would need. Definitely way more than the wild cards that we have. But that, it's not terrible. And as far as the things that we have just gotten no copies for, yeah, that number is a separate number, and it does seem like we are probably at 1,000 that way too, or maybe even as high as 4,000, since you need 4 copies of each of these cards. It's not crazy though. It's nowhere as crazy as, say, trying to own every single Magic card that came out since Alpha, or trying to own every single Magic card that came out even in the past 5 years, particularly if you're trying to get different skins or things like that. Here's a great example. You have this version of this card and then this reprint of this card. At a certain point, these should just merge together, since the only difference is that little image, particularly in a digital game. Or you should be able to at least filter those out, because it's going to get really ridiculous at a certain point for that. But yeah, this list is not as long as you might think. We've actually made way more progress. If I was to go and launch Hearthstone in comparison and just try to look at all the cards I don't have in Hearthstone, probably wouldn't be missing as many, but I'd still probably be missing 500 or 600 cards. I don't even know how many expansions have come out since I stopped playing Hearthstone, whether it was 1 or 2 or 3. Alright, well, we've got this loaded now. So the Mafia series I need to check because I believe all of these have been remastered, and so owning the old versions of the Mafia series is questionable, although it's also questionable whether I want to play the Mafia series at all, particularly since Mafia 3 took it in a bad direction. Let's see, this game, Magibot, is not reviewed. This game, Magic Masks, is not reviewed, so I don't know why they're on the wish list in the first place. Here we have a furry visual novel game that is $19.99. I don't know if I really want to go down that route at this point because it would just be a pain. Here we have a Japanese visual novel game. I do want to play Manhunt even though it's mixed. I kind of would like it to be remastered and not have some problems. This game, Mansions of Madness, it's very positive. That's a card game. Let's see. Monkin Forest and Forest Girl. Mary Skelter Nightmares. Was that Massachusetts? Looks like a weird horror game. Masquerade Songs of Shadows. Mass Effect 2. There's a question. Do I want to play Mass Effect as a series? Or is it just not relevant anymore? Masters of Amina. Matahari. I want to play it. Unfortunately, it is mixed. Maul, Mallard, and Cold Shadow. I probably should buy this game just in case it disappears again. Max and the Magic Marker. The Max Payne series. I can see playing all those. All three of them are rated very positively. Max and the Curse of Brotherhood. This game, McPixel, I should rethink. Menders. Mechanica. Should look at that. Mechanism. Looks like it's not well received. Mega Man games. Again, things I'd like to own, some of which are mixed, most of which are positive. Again, I don't know if I'd actually play all the Mega Man games. Melty Blood Actress, again, Current Code is a fighting game. Memoranda. Memoria. Memory Dogma, looks like another Japanese visual novel. Meow Motors. Mercenary Kings. Here's a game called Merge that doesn't have any reviews. Apparently it's a student project, I bet. Merrily Perilly. People kind of hyped this up and then immediately forgot about it. Message Quest. Messiah. This has some weird relevancy, but I definitely wouldn't want to pay $14.99. The Metal Gear series. I don't know how many, if any, of the Metal Gear games I really want to play, particularly since I haven't played any of them at all. So starting at Metal Gear Rising Revenge or Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zero, which I think is DLC to the Phantom Pain, that's questionable. The Metal Slug series, I'd be willing to play that, or at least own it. The Metro 2033 game versus Metro Light. We have Metropolis Lux Obscura. I think this is probably an adult game. Yeah, we have something that looks like a Japanese visual novel. Microsoft Flight Simulator 10 Steam Edition. I think it's down to a much more reasonable price now. Middle-earth Shadow War. There's something I should buy, but not at $50. Let's see. Midnight Mysteries. We should figure out if these are hidden object games or if these are adventure games. Let's see. Midwinter. Mighty Gunvolt. Mighty Number 9. Is it relevant to play Mighty Number 9 just to say it's a crappy game? I don't think so. My Switch Force games. I may not need actually to buy Academy. if you buy the collection, and maybe the same is true for Hyperdrive Edition. So I should double check to make sure those are all separate games. Minoria, Mirror Maker, the adult game. It's always been real cheap, so I don't know if I could actually play it without censoring it too much. Or though, here we have something called Missed Messages, which is like a student project. Murder Most Misfortunate, Mobius Final Fantasy, like Mobius Empire Rising. Let's see, Mon Mushu, that might be an adult game. Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom, Monster Hunter World. Yeah, I'd love to play that, although I would have to be careful not to spend too much time on it. Monster Hunting for Love, Monsters Love You, two different monster dating games, Monster Mon Piece, and Monster Prom. Wow, several monster dating games. Monsters Ate My Birthday Cake, Monstrum, Moon Hunters. Moonlight Mansion is mixed, so we should evaluate that. Moonlighter. I think this system kind of works fairly well to just say, yeah, I'm going to go look at these games and spend more time off screen on these games. But it almost certainly also is part of the reason why I am not specifically recording anything else off screen, is because I am spending this extra time. I wanted to play Moss at some point. Well, I want to play a lot of these. Mountain Blade. I need to double check to make sure that's a single player game worth playing. Mount Your Friends 3D. I need to double check to see if that's a game I could play single player. This is a game that I think just makes your controller vibrate. So I should double check that, because yeah, I don't think I need that. It looked like a funny game to spotlight, but there was a lot of things before YouTube started to try to be more family friendly and focus on that content, so that felt like it would have been more in line with what the vibe of YouTube was compared to what the vibe of YouTube is now. If it was all up to me, I'd still cover some of these joke games. I don't know if this is really worth having on the follow list. My Friend Pedro, another game that was super hyped and people forgot about it. My Heroes 1 Justice, fighting game, mostly positive. Maya of the Desert is mixed. We'll check that one out. And we won't have too much more. So yeah, that's a decent collection of games to try and investigate and move forward on the wishlist cleanup. That's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a